afternoon. I'm Divija, and so I'm going to start. 1,300,000,000 and still counting. That is the number of people who live in India, and I'm one of them. This accounts for the second largest population in the world. With such a large population and so much variation in the structure of income, problem arises. It's inevitable. On November 8th, 2016, the Indian government announced the monetization of currency. So the currency was changed. The new bills were introduced and the old bills were useless. So all the money with the people they had currently was useless. Because of this, the markets, they crashed. Oil prices raised drastically. Food production was low because the farmers, they were not getting, they did not have the sources or the money for it. There were not enough investments. Formation of capital became a problem. Resources were not available to everyone. This dire step was taken to control the damage the large population had done, like they were indulged in corruption, the use of black money, not paying proper taxes. Having a first-hand experience of living through all of this, I like to claim, or my proposition is that India is slow to develop economically due to its large population. Here are some major issues I'm going to explain that the large population causes. First, the population growth places stress on the natural resources. Second, capital formation is difficult. Third, there's a problem in investment. And finally, shortage of food hampers economic development. So, to start my explanation why large population is a problem for economic development or growth for our country. Like I said, to begin with the first supporting claim, India's population growth places stress on the natural resources. Due to rising population, a lot of resources are used for people rather than the development of the country. So to back my point, here are some statistics. India produces around approximately 1 billion gigawatt of electricity per hour. However, production levels are not enough to meet the rising demands. Even this is not enough for us. According to the Central Electricity Authority in India, their latest survey projects that consumption of energy in the industrial sector is almost around 400,000 watts, and the consumption of electricity by the people is almost around 500,000 watts. Also, resources are not shared equally amongst the people. So how unequal is India? As the economist Bronco Maltese says, the question is simple, the answer is not. Like the distribution of coal, some states have availability than others, like states in the middle India have a lot of coal production, and some states that are in the east, they don't. So the resources are distributed unequally throughout the country. That's a huge problem, and somehow is adding up in the process of slow economic development. This was one of the problems that hampers in economic development. The second supporting claim focuses on capital formation. There is a problem in formation of capital. The birth rate is high and the life expectancy is high. So almost 55% of the population, as what we term, is dependent population. They're consuming resources but are not contributing to the economy. So the rate of capital formation falls. Thus, the economic development is low. So till now we focus on resources, capital formation. The third supporting claim focuses on the problem of investment. Due to explosion of population, the growing rate is 1.8% annually. To stabilize the existing economic growth, 7.2% of national income must be invested, which is not happening because of the dependent population. To strengthen my argument, the fourth and the final supporting claim is the shortage of food grains hampers economic development. Shortage of food supply affects people's health, and productivity. Lower the productivity, lower the per capita income. India ranks 98th with 214 million people going hungry. With this, productivity will always decrease, that's inevitable. Also, the shortage of food makes underdeveloped countries like India to import food from abroad. So, a large part of foreign exchange is spent on importing goods and food. Here are some statistics. Important grains that we import here are like wheat, maize, rice, which we already produce, but they're not good enough for the population of India. We almost spend around 1 billion USDs to import, and approximately 800 million USDs for fruits and vegetables, which we also produce, but that's not enough. So the import has increased 100 times since 2014 to 2017. A lot of money is spent here instead of adding to the economy. So this is evident that natural resources are not enough for the population of India. Capital formation, investment, and shortage of food are some of the problems that are caused by the increase of population, and are factors that somehow are responsible for the slow economic development of India.
Right, well, I like the opening because it sets up a little bit of the controversy on the subject. You are making a cause-effect claim, and you're blaming primarily the population there. I thought you did a pretty good job when you were talking about resources at the beginning, although especially when you talk about the amount of energy produced versus the amount that is demanded. I think one of the things that you need an additional step there that shows that shortage of energy resources retards or prevents additional development, or that people are unwilling to invest there because they are uncertain about whether or not long-range resources are going to be available. The distribution of the resources, I'm not sure how important that is. Depending, it might depend a little bit on the political nature of the country, whether or not regions operate independently and have sovereign control over those sorts of resources. Maybe that matters more, maybe it doesn't matter. It's hard for me to tell. I just think, for example, in the United States, our resources are not necessarily well divided, but that doesn't necessarily prevent people from benefiting from having the resources here. We've got a lot of energy resources, for instance, and I don't think that the only place that I know that it actually benefits a particular region especially is Las Vegas, when it comes to the electricity from the dam there. Otherwise, pretty much, California benefits from oil and gas and coal from other parts of the country, and other parts of the country benefit from natural resources that we have, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure how the regional element matters, and that would probably need a little bit more explanation. And of course, you don't really have that much time. The capital issue, I think, is a little bit clearer because you do have some information here about high birth rates and long life expectancy, and the notion that this leads to a high amount of the dependent population. I think I know what you're talking about there, but I think it needs to be clarified a little bit more. Not everybody in the audience is going to be familiar with that terminology, and as a consequence, if there's a high amount of the dependent population, like you said, then there's less willingness to invest, or less certainty about whether or not they're going to be resources or employees, that sort of thing. I can see why that might have an effect on the capital formation. The investment thing, for instance, I think is tied into that. I'm not sure that it really needs to be a separate point, and since you don't have a lot of information in that point, it seems like it would be better to maybe fold that in. And then the last point is, let me see here. The food shortages. You talk about how much gets imported there. And again, I guess that's a suggestion that because that money is going out to pay for importation of food, that it's not available for development of resources in India. And since the amount of food that they have to consume is dependent on the population, I can see that relationship also. This is a chain argument where a lot of things are connected to the point that you're making, and I think that you did a pretty good job on those things. Presentation's a little bit mechanical. You might want to do a little bit less reading, but I know that you had a lot of technical material to get out, so that's probably the way it's going to sound. I thought that you had a very good preview of what the supporting structure was going to be. It was relatively easy to follow. Like I said, the information was thinner on points 3 and 4, but the explanations were clear on most of those points. All right, thank you.